Tonight, the economic reality of 54 days of war, cancelled flights, higher food and fuel costs, and things could get even worse. And for the 20,000 seafarers trapped around the Strait of Hormuz, often with missiles flying overhead, every minute is dangerous. I'll speak live to the captain of a stranded oil tanker. In Lebanon, the search for a missing journalist and the families scouring the rubble for their loved ones, killed minutes before the ceasefire came into effect. So with both sides stuck in diplomatic limbo, what's the best way to negotiate with Tehran? I'll speak to a former Iranian diplomat. Plus, dismissed as a whitewash, but projected to make hundreds of millions. How Hollywood's one-sided account of Michael Jackson's life is dividing fans and critics. And how dynamic pricing is driving up the cost of being an England fan at the World Cup in the US this summer. It's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. We've talked a lot on this programme about how what's happening in a narrow waterway 4,000 miles away could upend our lives. And today, the economic impact of the war being waged by Iran and the United States is becoming even clearer. As 3 more ships were seized today in the Strait of Hormuz, dozens more have been queuing up for weeks carrying much-needed cargo. Tonight, we'll find out what it's like to be trapped on board one of those vessels with little contact with the outside world. Coming up, I'll speak live to the captain of an oil tanker who's been stranded in the Persian Gulf with his crew for 54 days. And here in Europe, countries are beginning to think about what could happen when airlines run out of jet fuel. The inevitable result will be cancelled flights and higher prices. Have a listen.
Unfortunately, it's very likely that many people's holidays will be affected either because of flight cancellations or very expensive tickets. What we're trying to do is do as much as we can to prevent that happens. But even if we do everything we can, if the jet fuel is not there, it's not there.
Well, that's the blunt assessment from the man in charge of the European Union's energy policy. And in the UK, another economic hit to households, inflation. That's the rate of which prices are increasing, has spiked and is now at 3.3%. That's affecting everything, the cost of a full tank in your car, manufacturing, even the cost of food.
It's had a huge impact, around £1,000 per lorry. Coming to the UK, we have 6, 7 to 10 lorries a day, so it could be £30,000, £40,000 a week of costs.
So we've got a lot of ground to cover tonight, but let's begin with what's it like to live on a ship near the Strait of Hormuz as Washington and Tehran battle for control. Well, joining me now is Captain Rahman Kapoor. Thank you so much, Captain, for joining us here on the programme. I've just, in my introduction, talked about the fact that you and your crew have been stranded somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz for about 54 days. Just tell me how you all are.
Hi, good evening. This is Captain Rahman Kapoor. Thank you for having me. Yes, it is really very disappointing, Since 54 days, we are here stranded inside this conflict zone. And the most important, most concerning part is the uncertainty and helplessness, and prolonged stays, delayed repatriations. All these points are very much concerning at the moment. My crew is, under constant stress ever since the war started, since we are stranded inside this conflict zone. And there is nothing much we can do, And as you can see on the screen also, there are hundreds of ships around us, and there are, nearly 20,000 seafarers stranded inside the Persian Gulf.
It's, extraordinary images that you have sent to us about what's going on around you. You are in an active war zone. This nightmare really unfolded for you and your crew at the beginning of this war. You're facing a level 3 security threat. Just help our audiences understand what that means.
Well, we are maintaining a level 3 security level on board ship. There are 3 security levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 3 being the highest security level, where we have to do, we have to restrict ourselves strictly on ship. We cannot get down from the ship. Nobody can board the vessel, and we have to maintain the security watches round the clock, and the special security measures are there, and we have to keep a very close lookout. My guys are continuously on watch, watching for the drones, unidentified boats, or missiles, and it is not a regular thing on board ship. So whenever vessel is in danger zone, in war conflict, or passing through any piracy zone, then we maintain the security level 3, which is highest security level.
But this is unprecedented. I mean, you've talked about being in danger zones in the past, and that's why you have these security levels. But I imagine throughout your career, you've never experienced a moment like this. And you've talked about drones and missiles. Just help us understand what that's been like for all of you there. I mean, it must be quite terrifying.
Yes, it is. When war started, we just found ourselves in between this conflict zone, and we saw several hundreds of missiles flying over our head, and especially during early morning or the late evening time, we witnessed several missiles and explosion noises, and the shock of those explosions we were felt on ship. Even though we are quite far from land, but still we could feel the shock on the vessel. And my whole crew was under stress. As an we heard the news that war has started and there are attacks happening on merchant ships. It was very disturbing. My whole crew was under constant stress, and they had so many questions on their face, and they were worried about their well-being and safety. And
Captain Kapoor, just talk us through how you're all surviving there. How are you getting food and water supplies?
yes, we were lucky that we had lifted quite good amount of provisions uh, in the beginning of the war, and very thankful to our company that they have been assisting very well, and replenishing our food supplies timely. So our stores are quite stocked up at the moment, and hopefully we didn't face a major issue. What we expected in the beginning, that we might face food issues, as these countries, the nearest country being Iraq and Kuwait, where we are stranded right now. Uh, there might be a shortage of food or something like that, but unfortunately, luckily we are lucky to have good stock of food, although the prices must have gone high, but we were lucky to have sufficient food on ship.
Yes, we've got some images that we will probably bring up on our screen of a smaller ship bringing those supplies to your ship. So, there is a lot of movement still in the sea where there are ships moving around.
Not exactly. This is the special scenario, where we have to request for food, and special arrangements has to be made to arrange this boat and food supplies. It takes like weeks to arrange all this. We have to obtain various permissions from their port authorities, and then while we are lifting our provision, as you can see, there is a naval boat standby over there, and naval boat is continuously patrolling around the vessel, ensuring the safety and security all the time. Even naval boat contacted us and asked us, is everything okay, why this boat is there. I mean, they are supervising every moment of all the vessels. So see, you can see the naval ships are patrolling, and yes, after the operation is over, they will definitely go and check that small boat as well. They have their own procedures. So it is very controlled operation, even though it looks very small operation, that we are just simply lifting the provisions from the boat, but it is very controlled. which we never experienced earlier. It used to be very, very normal operation for us, but in this given time, it has become a very crucial operation.
We are in the middle of a fragile ceasefire. We are hearing and getting reports, and I know that you have access to information as well about boats, the ships that are being attacked and ships that are being seized as well. Do you have any certainty amongst all of this uncertainty about when you might have safe passage through, when you might be able to go home?
So this is the uncertainty and helplessness. These are overwhelming. And ever since ceasefire was announced on, I think, 8th of April, it was announced. Since then, at least we have seen that there are no missiles flying, no explosions being were there, and no attacks were on ships happening. But past few days, when this peace talk didn't do well, it failed. The peace talk failed. Since then, again, attacks are started on merchant ships. You must have heard in last couple of days. Today also there were attacks on ships. So in that case, what we feel as a seafarer, we feel like we have become collateral victims here with no fault of ours. We can understand there is war, there is politics involved, there are so many countries, so many people involved. But why we? We are simple human being. We are just simple sailors. We are not trained for war. We are not warriors. So what we are stuck here. We have become collateral victims.
And, briefly, how are your family feeling? Because they must be incredibly worried. And has there been any kind of support from your government or, any kind of outreach other than your company about how this issue might be resolved for you and your team and the, thousands of others stranded there?
Yes, we are in regular touch with our families, and families are worried as well. And many people are there waiting for our safe return to our home, and they have been requesting us that please do come back home. But we are helpless here. We are stuck. Earlier, there were no airports operating. All the flights were shut, and sea routes were blocked, and we were trapped inside vessel only. But now a few airports, they have started operating. But the bigger question is here, for example, if as a captain I want to get down from a ship, I cannot just get down. I have to hand over the command of the vessel to some other captain. But no one would agree to come and relieve me in this zone. That is the biggest concern, biggest worry at the moment. So there are several seafarers on board ship. There are I have officers, crew, those who have completed their contract on ship and still stuck here, still trapped, because we are not getting relievers. Companies are trying their best, no doubt. Companies helping us, they are trying their best, but it is not a normal situation. So, and we are overdue by 2 months, 3 months, and we are stuck on ship. So of course, families are waiting for us, and it is not an easy situation to handle with.
Well, Captain Kapoor, we're really grateful that you've joined us on the programme in this very difficult time for you and your crew members.
Thank you. Happy to help. Thank you.
Well, Donald Trump may have extended his ceasefire with Iran, but the contested Strait of Hormuz has still seen some action today, as you heard there from Captain Kapoor. Well, as you've been also, as I said, hearing, Iran today confirmed it had seized 2 vessels as its president called out the hypocritical rhetoric of his US counterpart. Here's our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark.
Day 54 of the war should have been a day upon which hostilities restarted or there'd been a peace deal. But after 6 delays, President Trump announced a 7th delay and allowed more time for the Iranians to get their documents together for a possible peace conference in Islamabad. That was all welcome, but while that was happening, quite dramatic events were taking place in the Strait of Hormuz themselves. The Euphoria, a ship here marked in green, was trying to run the blockade, going quite a long way north, probably to avoid the minefields, which we think have been sown further south, and was intercepted. But it also intersected with the tracks of two other ships, the Epimenidas and the Francesca. And both of these ships had their transponders turned off. But as they got near to the point of some sort of interception, they turned their transponders on again, possibly to indicate to the Iranians that they were not the Euphoria that the Iranians were obviously interested in. Nevertheless, both of those other ships, it is now reported, have been captured and taken in to an Iranian port. We're not sure at this stage what has happened to the Euphoria. This is a satellite image of that area. Now, this is broken cloud, that's why it looks slightly odd, but there is the Epimenidas, there is the Francesca. And something else, Sky Forensics have spotted this. That looks like a ship, a boat. Much smaller, of course, than the two big freighters, and it's got wake behind it. It's moving forward. Quite possibly, we can't prove this, but quite possibly, that is an Iranian gunboat that might have been involved in the seizure of one or both of these ships. All of that is pretty aggressive stuff at a time when we are supposed to be talking about a new peace deal. There's not much the Americans can do about this because their blockade line is between the Pakistani coast and the Omani coast. Most of the American Navy is on this side of the line. And so they're a long way away, a good 150 to 200 miles away from all those things that were happening up here this morning. That is the nature of their blockade. It's a fairly distant blockade, as indeed it has to be. Which leaves us with the question as to whether it is possible that President Trump's assumption about this conflict and the assumptions of people like Galibaf, who look as if they're leading the Iranian team, can somehow be reconciled if a meeting takes place, if sometime in the next 2 or 3 days in Islamabad. President Trump says that the Iranians have got no cards in their hand, they've got nothing left. But American intelligence itself, reporting to Congress, has said that Iran retains about 40% of its pre-war arsenal of drones, which were thought to number hundreds of thousands at one point. It has 3,000 missiles at the beginning of the crisis. It's confirmed to have lost 1,000 and might have lost another 1,000. But it's entirely possible that the Iranians have got 1,000 or more ballistic missiles still in existence. And just as important as the missiles are the missile launchers. And the Americans think that upwards of 60% of the missile launchers the Iranians had have been destroyed. They had, we think, about 1,000 launchers to begin with. They may have lost 500 or 600 of them, but it looks as if they've got at least another 100 back into commission, one way or another. If these talks in Islamabad do take place, President Trump thinks he's playing a game of poker. But increasingly, on the evidence of today, the Republican Guard think they're playing a game of Russian roulette. Spin the chamber, gun to the head, click, now it's your turn, Mr. President. They are prepared to play for their very existence. And President Trump is only prepared to play for his political legacy. And they figure that probably they can tolerate more spins at the chamber than President Trump. I guess we'll find out in the next week or two whether they're right.
That's Professor Michael Clark there. Now, on a more global scale, the world's leading economies face a nervous wait for any sign that the Strait of Hormuz may reopen. The waterway is a major shipping route and, when closed, cuts off 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supply, and that's having a real-life impact in Europe. Just this morning, German airline Lufthansa cancelled 20,000 short-haul flights over the summer to try and stretch their fuel reserves. Elsewhere, Scandinavian airlines cut 1,000 flights this month, citing high oil and jet fuel prices. And the Dutch arm of Air France, KLM, have cancelled 160 flights in the coming months. And things could get even worse, as our Europe correspondent Alistair Bunkle explains.
Unfortunately, it's very likely that many people's holidays will be affected either because of flight cancellations or very expensive tickets.
What you heard just then was a warning from the energy chief here at the European Union when I spoke to him in Brussels just a few minutes ago. He's worried, and he thinks we should be too.
The IEA has said that this is a crisis that is as bad as 73 and 22 combined, and I tend to agree with that.
The EU and its member states imports around 40% of its jet fuel, and around half of that comes from the Middle East. And so with the war in Iran still continuing and the Strait of Hormuz still closed, there is no more jet fuel currently getting in. And so the situation could get very serious very quickly.
Even if we do everything we can, if the jet fuel is not there, it's not there.
And now listen to what the head of Italy's Civil Aviation Authority has also told us today. Another warning about your summer holidays.
Best to recommend holidays nearby. For those who still want to risk taking a long trip, it's a good idea to consider special insurance that can provide a reassurance regarding a guaranteed refund in the event of delayed or cancelled flight.
Lufthansa, one of the biggest airline groups in Europe, has already taken preemptive measures. It's announced the cancellation of 20,000 mainly short-haul flights. Some airlines have raised ticket prices to cover for the increase in fuel costs. And this is before the crisis has really even started to bite. In the 6 weeks since the Iran war began, the EU and its member states have already paid 24 billion euros more for importing fossil fuels. That's around 500 million euros every single day. And don't think that this will be a short-term crisis. The EU is warning there could be years of economic pain ahead.
I have to say that even in a best-case scenario, the price crisis will still last for quite some time, because gas infrastructure has been ruined to a degree that will take years to rebuild. And this means that for months and maybe even years yet, we will see much higher prices than we had before this crisis started.
Alistair Bunkle there. Well, we know the US president has been even more sensitive to criticism than usual of late. First, the man who campaigned for his election, Conservative pundit Tucker Carlson, apologised for backing him. Then this opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal prompted another Truth Social tirade. Donald Trump's threats of violence have not worked against Iran and talks are at a standstill. So is Iran playing Donald Trump for a sucker? Well, let's get the views of Saeed Hossein Mousavian, who served as a diplomat and nuclear agreement negotiator for Iran. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on the programme. I just want to get your assessment. 7 weeks into this war, we're facing quite a fragile ceasefire at the moment. But, you know, just in terms of how the Iranian authorities are dealing with this situation, what would be your assessment?
Actually, we understand the situation is at a clear deadlock. And the reason is that both parties, they agreed to a ceasefire to negotiate in order to reach a deal. About 12 days ago, we had a negotiation in Islamabad, Pakistan. It was at the highest level after 48 years between Iran and the US. In the first day, there was a good progress. They were very close to finalize and sign a memorandum of understanding in the second day, but unfortunately, for which nobody knows why, the United States delegation left Islamabad, and immediately the US imposed the sea blockade. And based on international rules and based on United Nations Security Council resolution, sea blockade is act of war. That's why Iranians, they say the US should come back to ceasefire, lift the sea blockade.
Remove the blockade?
Yeah, remove the blockade. And Iran, in response, will open the Strait of Hormuz. The US has not agreed, and they are insisting to continue the blockade. And Iranians, in response, are also imposing limitations on Strait of Hormuz. That's why we are at a deadlock.
Well, do you think, though, the United States is trying to exert as much pressure, and that's what we're hearing from Donald Trump himself and the Trump administration, to force the Iranian authorities to open up the Strait of Hormuz? But now we've reached, as you say, this deadlock where both sides are digging their heels in and neither side is willing to budge. And perhaps the regime is thinking, well, we have more time on our hands than the Trump administration does.
No, I think the main problem is with the U.S. understanding. As long as the U.S. understanding or narrative or policy is to capitulate Iran, we will never have a successful negotiation. We need Washington to understand negotiations aimed at Iranian capitulation neither work in the past and nor will work in the future. We need a negotiation fair, beneficial for both parties. We need a deal which would be face saving for both sides, because every side should be able to sell it for its domestic public opinion.
Do you
Therefore,
think, Mr. Mousavian, that, although Donald Trump has described the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that Donald Trump brokered back in 2015 as the worst deal in history, that frankly, if that deal had remained, perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation today?
No doubt about it, because the deal was in full implication for 3 years or even 4 years. And the Iranian nuclear program was fully controlled, supervised by International Atomic Energy Agency. You had 16 reports during 3-4 years. Every report, the IAEA said the Iranian nuclear program is peaceful. They had 24 hours, 7 days, full control, inspections, cameras, everything was there. There was no high-level enriched uranium. And even the US and Iran, they were engaged in bilateral issues. Even 16 American sailors illegally entered Iranian water territory. They were released in less than 24 hours, just because they had relation. Even negotiations on Syria and Yemen started between the US and Iran, between Iran and Europe. We were in good track, and I believe it would have been much better for President Trump to invest and to ask for JCPOA plus, no problem, because he could have a better deal by keeping the JCPOA, go to the regional conflict between Iran and the US, and to negotiate the other disputed issues rather than killing the deal.
Killing the deal. Mr. Mousavian, really good to talk to you. Unfortunately, we are going to have to leave it there.
Thank you.
We've got some breaking news to bring you now. A Lebanese military official has said that the body of a Lebanese journalist who was injured in an Israeli strike has been found under the rubble in southern Lebanon. Well, let's go straight to our correspondent who joins us from Beirut, Diana Magnay. Diana, this story developed earlier today, the sad news that this journalist had been killed. Can you just give us a little bit more information?
Yes, Yalda, this is Amal Khalil. She works for the Al Akbar news agency, which is Hezbollah aligned. And she and another journalist colleague, freelance, who was working with her, were inside Lebanese occupied territory, this so-called yellow line, which Israel has defined and forbidden entry into. And they were in a sort of two-vehicle convoy, it seems, and the reports that we've been getting from various sources have made it quite difficult to work out what was happening. But according to the IDF, they had left what the IDF deems to have been a military building or structure belonging to Hezbollah, and had gone in two cars deeper towards Bint Jbeil, which is a town in the south which has seen very, very fierce fighting, again within Lebanese occupied territory. The IDF called an airstrike on the first vehicle. 2 people in that were killed. Amal and her colleague Zainab then tried to take cover in a nearby house, and there was another airstrike on that house. Now, from what we are understanding from Lebanese officials, the rescue team that tried to go there were denied access. There was live fire coming at them. That seems to have been resolved over the course of various hours. The IDF said that they didn't block access. That's not what we were hearing. And there have been rescue teams trying to work to try and get Amal from underneath the rubble. And as you say, that is unfortunately not, her body has now been found. We understand that her colleague Zainab suffered serious head injuries too. And this brings the number of journalists killed here in Lebanon since October the 7th, 2023, up to 15. Israel does not have a good track record, as you know, in targeting journalists. I was down in the south of the country earlier today looking at the latest airstrikes, which continued right up until the ceasefire was announced. Just take a look at our report.
I want to tell Israel this. Our unborn children will resist them with their own teeth because they are bloodsuckers, both the Israelis and the Americans. Not the people, not the people. It's that hysterical man that they brought to destroy the world.
You can see why she is so angry. For the 25 people killed here in an Israeli airstrike 59 minutes before the ceasefire took hold.
My nephew is still under the rubble. My brother was removed, but both of his children are gone, and my niece and his wife.
It's full of children, she says. A fisherman all his life, Hassan Hijazi shows us the scars where he was shot out at sea by Israeli forces in the late 60s and in the 1990s. Born 8 years before the State of Israel, now Israel has killed his family.
What do we have to do with Israel? We just want to protect our country and our villages. But every time you speak on it, you end up fighting with your own community. Better to stay silent.
This is Tyre's idyllic seafront. People come here to smoke shisha, to eat at Chop's Diner. Look at it now. Now huge JCBs claw up great hunks of rubble that were people's kitchens and living rooms and the place of their memories, still searching for Hijazi's nephew and one more. And it is exhausting work. One of those killed here was an 80-year-old woman, Maha Abu Khalil. Now, in her 20s, she had tried to hijack an El Al airliner in Athens airport, and she'd been jailed by Israel and finally exchanged in a prisoner swap. She had been living in one of these buildings. Now, we don't know if she was the target, but more than 50 years after that, they killed her. Do you think that they targeted this building because of your aunt?
So we don't know what they think, but they keep a grudge. They might have, because there's only civilians here. There's no warriors, no infrastructure, there's nothing. It's a building inhabited with civilians, everybody. You've been here, you've seen.
We move to another strike site nearby, again in a residential area where a journalist and 2 other civilians had been killed. When we hear an announcement of the funeral service for someone pulled from the rubble just after we'd left. It is Hassan Hijazi's nephew. Abu Dahab, he was called, father of gold, because of what he would catch in the sea and the money it brought. Now laid to rest in the Lebanese flag, grief written on his uncle's face. And from there, Abu Dahab's body is rushed to burial, as quick as they can to hurry his soul towards God. These were fishermen, civilians, elderly men who had survived many of Israel's wars on their land, killed in the last hour of this one.
Dinah, in the last week or so, as you know, I've been there in Beirut speaking to Lebanese ministers, officials, and the one thing that they continued to reiterate was how concerned they were that the southern part of Lebanon especially would be turned into Gaza 2.0. That's how they described it to me. Just give me a sense of, while you were down there, the sentiment and what people there were telling you.
I mean, it's a sense of anger and of despair. As I said in that report, these have been so many endless cycles of war in southern Lebanon. And it is the Shiite communities in the south that have always borne the brunt of Israel's wars in Lebanon because of Hezbollah. And of course, that then fuels people going to fight for Hezbollah if you have people killed all around you. And that's what I've really noticed. Everybody you speak to has lost somebody or 2 or 3 members of their family. And we were as close as we could get to the yellow line, which is Israel's name for the sort of forward defense line, they're calling it, that then is Israeli occupied territory. It's a 10-kilometre zone really around the border. And the villagers there are absolutely devastated. I mean, there has been unbelievable fighting there going on. It's not possible for people to return to those villages now. Those are holiday homes. Those are wonderful houses. They're overlooking the Mediterranean. They're absolutely destroyed. And that's not even within the area that Israel now occupies, where we know that they are razing homes to the ground. They are destroying entire villages. The Gaza model that those ministers who were speaking to you were talking about, they were quoting Israel's defense minister saying that's what he wanted for that strip of land in southern Lebanon. So I think there is a real sense of despair. It forges people to get behind Hezbollah, which sort of thrives in moments like this, on that resistance narrative. And that makes it very, very difficult for, diplomatic efforts to get off the ground. Yalda.
Diana, thank you so much for all of your reporting there. Well, this is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, a new film about the rise of Michael Jackson. His hit cinemas today, but there's controversy already.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you.
Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman.
So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
But I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim. A new film about the king of pop, Michael Jackson, opens in cinemas today, but it already has been accused of sanitizing the singer's past. The movie follows the Jackson's extraordinary rise to stardom, but makes no reference to allegations he sexually abused children, a scandal which dominated the final years of his life. And a warning, this report from Katie Spencer contains flash photography.
17 years after his death, a new Michael Jackson movie is coming out. And if forecasters have got it right, it could gross $1 billion. Because in spite of allegations of child sexual abuse, in the last decade, Jackson's global popularity has not waned. From jukebox musicals to Spotify streams, when the singer died, he was reportedly hundreds of millions in debt. Today, his estate is valued at $2 billion.
Just have all these songs in my head.
Jafar Jackson, Michael's nephew, has earned quite a bit of praise for his performance in the new film, with the family executors heavily involved behind the scenes. It is a story emphasising Jackson's loneliness, childhood trauma and talent, skirting around the controversy by stopping at the height of his fame.
The film's original third act reportedly had included some abuse allegations, but that section had to be cut and reshot when lawyers pointed out that past legal settlements prevented all parties from talking about what did or didn't go on. With such a narrow lens on Jackson's life, there are plenty of people who hate the idea that the film will undoubtedly revive and reshape his public image.
Not least the woman who commissioned the Leaving Neverland documentary about these two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, detailing their alleged childhood sexual abuse by Jackson and the psychological aftermath. Former Channel 4 boss Dorothy Byrne says Hollywood should be ashamed.
It's wrong to even listen to his music, never mind go and see a film, because people are making money out of this. And that's what you have to say to yourself. You wouldn't go and see a film about Jimmy Savile that was all about him running marathons. You shouldn't go and see a film about Michael Jackson, the singer, because he's not just Michael Jackson, the singer. This film is not telling you the truth about him.
Jackson's posthumous earnings have relied on dismissing the allegations of child sex abuse, which the singer denied in life and which his executors have contested since. While we might live in the age of cancel culture, when it comes to Jackson, because his music is so beloved, is the truth that a lot of people just don't want to hear it, mentally splitting the music from the person because it's intertwined with our formative years.
Michael Jackson is the biggest star of the universe and always has been and always will be. If you start getting rid of music that's made by artists who have behaved horribly, then you're getting rid of everybody from James Brown to Wagner. Most people are sophisticated and they know if they go to see a movie, they might go, oh, this is not quite right, or there's more to the story, even though I enjoyed the movie. And then they can find out by researching this.
It is a lot harder, impossible, some might argue, to unlike music you've grown up singing along to. But when it's an artist whose life was so mired in controversy, critics argue it's wrong to buy a ticket to a movie which paints him as a character deserving of our sympathy, but stops short of taking in the alleged trauma Jackson inflicted on others. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
So is it possible or right to separate the artists from their controversy? I've been speaking to Dan Reed, who produced the Leaving Neverland documentary. I started by asking him about an alleged leaked script. Just have a listen.
The script I read included the story of Jordan Chandler, or a version of the story of Jordan Chandler, who was the first child to publicly accuse Michael Jackson of molesting him back in 1992-93. And Jordan and his parents were very much represented in the script that I read as gold diggers as making a fake claim, and Michael Jackson was represented as the victim of this attempt to extort money from him, which is quite a neat reversal of the truth, as I see it. And the boy Jordan Chandler was then paid off and has since disappeared. The Jackson estate and the producers had to take that story out of the film because of a legal problem. The settlement that was agreed with Jordan Chandler and his parents included a clause that said you can't tell this story in a movie, and so they had to change everything. There are other stories available to them if they wanted to tackle the issue of child sexual abuse head on, but they seem to have completely ducked the issue and instead made a sort of, a movie version of a Spotify playlist.
Why do you think that they've done that? Do you think this was an attempt to rewrite Michael Jackson's life and career and history and legacy? Or do you think it is what they're saying it is, which is that, it goes up to 1984 when none of these allegations against Michael Jackson, ever surfaced?
Yeah, I think it began, with the script that I read as an attempt to contradict Leaving Neverland, to go, well, you've seen that documentary, let us show you, our version of the Jackson narrative. And they failed. They weren't able to do that. And instead, what they've got is a film that's going to make a ton of money because it's got songs and dance in it, but completely swerves the issue of his relationship with children. And I think probably a lot of people breathed a big sigh of relief when that course was taken, because in the end, it's all about money. It's all about money, and it's all about making bank. And for all the people involved, I hear this, the reviews are pretty poor, but the film's going to make a lot of money. So I think the project to try and rewrite the Jackson narrative and exonerate Michael Jackson and portray the children who accused him as gold diggers, as frauds, I think that's gone awry. That wasn't possible. I think probably it was driven by just a few people within the Jackson entourage, if you like, the Jackson estate. And now sort of common sense has prevailed and people have gone let's just take the money and run.
So, there are accusations that this is an attempt to whitewash the issue, that, as you say, some people are predicting that it will perhaps make over $1 billion worldwide. Does that leave you disappointed, essentially?
Well, I'm not disappointed that the Jackson camp has abandoned their attempt to rewrite the Jackson story and exculpate Michael Jackson, because the things he did to children were terrible. And any attempt to portray that in a positive light, I think, was both doomed to fail, but also would have been pretty unpleasant and pretty creepy. So in a way, considering how much money there is to make from Jackson's legacy, this was the obvious step. I think I don't see this version of the movie, as opposed to the script that I read, from a couple of years back. I don't see this as an attempt to really whitewash anything. It's just a blatant attempt to make as much money as possible off his music while completely avoiding any entanglement with the thorny, unpleasant issue of his relationship with children.
That was Dan Reed, the producer of Leaving Neverland. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up, one last chance to bag World Cup tickets, but has the average fan already been priced out?
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, Here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders.
It's dams like these that have become inflection points between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, which could potentially lead to water wars in the future. A terror attack has shattered the peace and tranquility of Kashmir, At least 26 people have been killed and as many injured when militants fired upon them. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
The old and young, all weary after being trapped for days as the worst floods have hit Kerala in a century.
3 days we are on a rooftop. They have no food, nothing.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. There have been reported deaths and many injuries, several critical.
Many families will grapple with the unimaginable loss of one of the worst disasters in India's aviation history.
The spiraling violence between two nuclear-armed neighbors that harbor decades of hostility just seems to be getting worse by the day.
Garbage dumps like this not only threaten the lives of millions of people, but also pose a deadly consequence on the environment and climate.
It is a source of death, decay, disease and pollution for hundreds of thousands of people living in its shadows.
There is so much disease because of this garbage. Sometimes it's so difficult to just breathe.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. It's a real kaleidoscope of people from all walks of life.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
Now, the Football World Cup is just a few months away, and today fans were given one last chance to secure a ticket. The tournament, hosted in the US this summer, is under fire over claims it is pricing out the average fan. So how did today's ticket sale go? Our sports correspondent Rob Harris tried his luck.
How many football fans have been doing this today, staring at FIFA's website rather than being out on a football pitch, trying to get those last-minute tickets for the World Cup? Well, we've spent over 2 hours sitting in a queue, unable to take a look at which tickets FIFA's put on sale with less than 2 months to go in this last-minute phase. They say 5 million have already been sold. It's a very unpredictable market because they're using variable pricing for the first time, dynamically changing based on demand. So it's uncertain until you get in how much anything is going to cost. And resale sites are legal in the United States, where most of these games this summer are being played. FIFA have their own site. We got into it to take a look at England's final group stage game against Panama in New Jersey. Tickets that were originally sold for about £150 are now being resold for 5 times as much. And FIFA takes a 30% cut of that. So fans might also look to the unofficial but perfectly legal resale sites. Here's one of them. It's actually got an investor in the Chelsea co-owner Todd Bowley. And here we see the England game against Panama. Tickets from £454 up to well over £4,000. It means it's going to be a pretty hefty bill for England fans, any fans from around the world, to go to this World Cup, and we've been pricing it up.
So we found a ticket available for £454, but you'll have to get to the US. The cost of flights for a 2-night trip from London to New York for England-Panama are around £800. Staying in a hotel in Manhattan for 2 nights could cost between £500 and £600. Then there's getting the train from New York's Penn Station to MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. The price has been hiked 10 times to £111 for the match. And that's just for a 15-minute 9-mile journey. You'll want to eat in the stadium. Prices haven't been released by FIFA yet. Usual stadium prices could see you pay around £17 for a beer and hot dog. So that's how a fan could have to fork out £2,000 to see one match at the World Cup. No wonder supporters groups are so unhappy.
FIFA has demonstrated that they remain deaf to the criticism by, again, continuing to implement this very aggressive marketing policy by trying to sell tickets to an even higher price. So very little can be done now. So the question is this the new norm, or is this an incident in the history of the World Cup?
FIFA itself has talked about the chilling effects of the price of trains at some of these World Cup locations. Some might say it's a bit rich coming from the governing body, given the prices they're charging for tickets at this biggest ever World Cup with 104 matches, the number of teams jumping from 32 to 48. FIFA projecting income in a 4-year period of over £8 billion. They say it's money that will be reinvested back into football globally. But many fans from around the world will feel priced out of the World Cup.
Rob Harris there. Well, that's the exorbitant cost of being a football fan at this year's World Cup. That's it for tonight's programme. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back at 9 p.m. tomorrow. The Wrap with Anna Botting is up next. Good night.